And so I was going to call this brief talk Good Friday. He literally loved us to death, but I don't think that's personal enough. And so I want to call it Good Friday. He literally loved you to death. I often watch the program Dragon's Den, where entrepreneurs are looking for people to invest in them and what they're offering. Would any of the dragons, I wondered, be interested in Jesus? Certainly a lot of his teaching wouldn't have encouraged many investors. Jesus said in Matthew's Gospel, when we read of the Beatitudes, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." And so it goes on. Not exactly a good sales pitch to the dragons. For 3 years, Jesus had put in his best pitch to all the movers and shakers, but very few responded. He was looking for people who would invest in him. You remember the story of the great banquet where everything is prepared, and then the master sends out his servants to invite those who have been given an invitation, and they come up with all their excuses. Jesus, when he was here, appealed to the high priest. He appealed to Pilate. He appealed to Herod, to the crowds, even to the disciples who all deserted him when he most needed their company. Who will invest in me? Who will take a risk of faith in me? Jesus was saying. In Dragon's Den, people's ideas are often torn apart, ripped to shreds. The crucifixion was the result of false claims against Jesus and what he was offering, and a lack of vision. But it wasn't just Jesus' message that was ripped to shreds, but his body was literally torn apart, ripped to shreds where no one would take him and what he had got to say seriously. Who would invest in this man who claimed to be the king of the Jews? This man of new ideas, this man of talk of a new kingdom, but who had been flogged to within an inch of his life. This man who could barely stand up, let alone bear the weight of his cross, who was mocked by a squad of soldiers, who placed a crown of thorns on his head and put a purple robe on him to mock him. Who would invest in Jesus now? But there's another way of looking at what happened on Good Friday. What about if Jesus was one of the dragons, looking for people to invest in? You see, what Jesus went through was showing you and me how much God wants to invest in us. You are not considered inferior by God. The world may tell you that your thoughts and ideas don't count, that everyone else is better than you, that others are more intelligent, more beautiful, more successful. Yet you are not insignificant. The place was Enniskillen in Northern Ireland, as a crowd of people were honouring those who had died in the 2 world wars. The bomb went off. Gordon Wilson held his daughter in his arms as she died. The next day, a single word was telephoned, faxed, copied around the news agencies of the world. That single word became the headline of newspapers across the United Kingdom. The man was interviewed on national television. Such was his impact that the Queen referred to it in her Christmas message that year. The word was forgiveness. Gordon Wilson said that he forgave those who killed his child. Not everybody agreed. There were not a few who said that to forgive like that was wrong. But whatever you believed, there was no doubt that we were witnessing something unusual, something almost of another world. Some said almost godlike. Anyway, back to the body of Jesus on the cross. Don't forget, it was imperative that Jesus was dead, as he had openly said that he would come back to life. To make sure, one of his executioners thrust a spear into his side, and blood and water came out. Blood came from the heart, and doctors have told us that the watery fluid comes from the sac around the heart. And therefore, Jesus probably died not from suffocation, but from heart failure. Quite literally, he died of a broken heart. As you stand before him, Jesus sees you of amazing value. I came across a parable. It's about how two thieves broke into a jewelry store. Instead of stealing any of the jewelry, they simply swapped the price tags. They put the high price tags on the cheaper jewelry and the low price tags on the most expensive gems. And for several weeks, not a single person noticed. People paid outrageous prices for the cheaper jewelry and rock bottom prices for the finest jewels. The point of the parable is pretty obvious. We live in a world where someone has switched the price tags. The world may label you as worthless, but God labels you as his masterpiece. The world may label you as an accident, but God labels you as fearfully and wonderfully made. The world may label you as rejected, but God labels you as chosen and deeply loved. You are not worthless. God says you are his child. That may be what the world doesn't want you to hear, but it is God's opinion of who you are and how much he loves you. When the dragons in Dragon's Den have heard enough, they say, I'm not investing, I'm out. They are words that you will never hear from Jesus. Until your final breath, he will be wanting for you to turn to him and to invest your life into his hands. There was once a very successful businessman who had only one son. The man cherished the child and longed to find a way to express his deep love. So he decided that each year he would purchase a priceless, multi-million-dollar painting that captured the real sentiments of his heart. He would hang that year's painting over the huge fireplace in the most prominent place of the house. For the first several years, the father chose the painting himself, as his son was too young. The first year he selected a glorious sunrise, depicting the radiance of life that his son had brought to him. The next year was a mountain stream, showing the refreshing overflow of love that they had together. The third year, as his son began to learn about God as creator, he brought a magnificent canvas of a grand mountain scene. As the son matured, he began to help the father choose the paintings until they owned one of the most valuable collections in the whole world. One day, war broke out in the land and the son was drafted. He met a young man who would become his dearest, most loyal friend. This friend turned out to be a delightful amateur artist who drew a simple but elegant sketch of the sun shortly before the sun was killed in battle. At the funeral, the friend presented the modest, obviously amateur drawing to the father, describing what his son had meant to him during his rigorous military days. The father hung the picture over the mantel in the place of honour above the rest of the priceless paintings they had collected together. A few years later, the father died, and the collection was auctioned to the highest bidder. Art curators from around the world descended upon the home, hoping to purchase any or even all of the paintings. The room was electric with anticipation as the auctioneer opened the bidding at £1,000 for the amateur drawing of the sun. Do I hear 1,000 for the sun? Do I hear 500? 200? Who will have the sun? Finally, a buyer purchased the sketch so that they could move on with the real collection. And then the auctioneer did the unthinkable. He ordered the auction closed. Hundreds of buyers gasped in disbelief. How can this be? We have come from around the world. How dare you cut us off? The auctioneer regained order and explained it was the father's desire that the entire collection be given to the one who buys the simple sketch of his son. For whoever has his son has his all.